And I just want to make sure that everybody can see all of this. I realized when I was looking at the video from last week that we couldn't really see a lot of my paints and but looking up here, I can sort of see what's going on. Okay, so we did this, and let me just put this up here for a second so the rest of you guys can see this. I now need to go in, I've got a lot of midtones in there. I need to go down in and find out where some of my darks are going to be before I take the resist off. So, you know, seeing what I did in my preliminary, let me just put my preliminary down. Well, here, I'll tell you what. We're going to turn this. Let's see. There. See that all? Yeah, that's all going to work. Okay. So, you know, seeing on the preliminary that we did, there's a lot of sort of darks that we need to put in before we're going to know where those light spaces are going to be. And I know it's sometimes a little difficult to be thinking about how all of that's going to work without it being finished. So I have to sort of think about how spaces work in my photograph. And I need to sort of say, oh, well, there's some darker spaces in here and in there. So I'm going to need to go in and I need to darken up some of what I already did because it's not dark enough. It really needs to have a little more value difference to it. And I see Dan's already found some in his, and like you found some of those darker areas in there. And that's going to make it a little bit easier for you to sort of see how the rest of it's going to go. Really like what happened with this cactus in the front there, with that light coming around them. So today's little project on this is going to be to come in and find that next layer of darks. So let's turn this around and pull that up. Let's see, get this photograph where I can see it. This is so different than the old way of doing demos for you guys.
Called the hybrid model.
The hybrid model. When do we put the brakes on so that we charge the battery? Okay, so what I'm going to need to be thinking about here is how I might come in, and so we've got this sort of design that happened with the saran wrap that I really like the feeling of what's going on with that. I like some of this sort of light and dark texture and feeling like there's things coming through here. So I'm going to try and maintain some of that. Okay. Let me get a nice dark green to start with. Now this green, I just mixed the phthalo blue with my sap green, and I want to add a little bit of, let's add a little bit of red to this because I want to sort of gray it down a little, and that was maybe a little too much. Get some more of that sap green in there. Okay, so now I've got a red brown, or I'm a greenish brown. So it's a really dark green, but it's still a little on the warmer side. And then I want to mix another one that is maybe a little bit more bluish. Just figuring out how to make some darks here. So, you know, when we mix our secondary colors with our primary colors, it will make our grays and browns. So that's why I mixed a little bit of red into that green. So now this is a nice blue green. I'm just seeing some cactus back there that have got a real blue green to them that I want to be able to maintain. And then let's mix a brown. Okay, I can start with this yellow. And I'm going to add burnt sienna to it.
And that's pretty gold.
It was Aurelian yellow.
Oh, really?
I could have done Quinn gold instead. And I'm just looking at this, wondering if, yeah, I need to add just a little bit of blue to this, because if I add blue to it, it's going to make it sort of a darker gray brown. That's okay for now. I'm going to need some darker than that. There's a little bit of red brown that happens. Okay, so I'm going to not keep this red for now. Just mix a little bit of the burnt sienna into it. Get a red brown there. Okay, any other colors? I'm not gonna, up in the top up here, I don't think I want to do much because I want to keep that pretty light the way it is. I will come in and do darker green in on top of this cactus eventually, but let's do a little bit of this other work first. Okay. That even a little grayer. Okay, so we've gotten, I'm not going to do this green bush. I'm going to pretend like it's not there, but I want to see some of these other spaces that I did. And then let's pull this up into something that's greenish, bluish up above there. And I'm going to just ease the top of that by thinning it into that lighter green that's up above. Okay. And then there was a bluer green over in here that's got these spikies on it. So let's just paint that out and just let some of that come in onto that light area back behind. I'm going to ignore this cactus back here. It's going to be too hard for me to do anything with him. And then this gets darker as it comes down in below here. It's pretty dark down into this area. And maybe there's a rock. Now, I didn't get my cactus taken down in here as far as I'm seeing it in the photograph. So, oh well. We'll let that become some shadows that run down through there. So it feels to you guys probably that I'm making everything up, and in some ways I am, but what I'm trying to see is what the feeling of what's here, what it's like, to recreate some of that. And then over in here, and there is a red over in here that I guess maybe I do want in here now. Bring a color in one place, you're going to need to have it somewhere else in the painting as well, or it's going to feel like, you know, it was the uninvited fairy that came to the party. And, but it needs to have friends so that it feels coherent, feels like he's part of the unit. And now I'm liking some of, I'm not really, I could come in here and just very carefully sort of paint over some of these spaces that were created, and I will do a little bit of that. because I like what happened with their shapes. And then these cactus underneath it here, I've actually created a little bit more space in the front of this than what the photograph had. But that needs to go dark in underneath there. So these are like shadows that come out and into here. And let's go a little bit darker right up in here. And a little darker right over there. Yeah, this needs to go a little darker right underneath that. And there's a shadow coming off of this big guy that I need to bring all the way forward. This still looks extremely abstract. And as you probably remember from when we did the preliminary, it looked awfully abstract to start with. Now let's see, maybe we can do some of that other cactus. Needs to get toned down a little bit, add a little bit of ultramarine blue to it. And remember how the fuzziness against that yellow was part of what was making those guys look like they had prickers on it. So I'm just going to bring some of these up and over and let that, I want to leave as much yellow standing out as possible. Some of these are a little bit more brownish down in the bottom. So just trying to sort of get the feeling of what's happening there without getting all the details. And hope that I don't get too much in here, because I still want a lot of light coming out through there. And maybe we need just above this. Yeah, I'm gonna need something up there. And let's let a little bit of that red come up into here. I'm just doing this sort of seat of the pants. There's still going to be that other tree coming in across through here, but I'm not sure if I'm prepared to deal with that right now. So let some of this just become shapes. Okay, let's let you guys see this up here. And I'll turn this, let's see, I'm going to turn this way. So, looks like a mess right now, doesn't it? But I'm really liking what I've done with this bit of dark running through here, and this feeling of some of the red, a little bit of texture up there, and I'll still want to get that tree in before I take the resist off. And maybe I want to paint just some little tiny prickers on some of that cactus on the right-hand side. Any thoughts, comments? You guys are all looking at it like,
No, you might not need prickers on that one on the right side.
yeah. You're getting a little bit of fuzz from the way it ran before. And of course, we can't see everything because without getting this resist taken off, you can't sort of see how the lights are going to work in here. And I'm actually going to just, so that when I take this off, that paint doesn't get into it real bad. Because sometimes if you got a lot of paint on the top of it, and you go to lift it off, it'll get caught up in it, and then it'll leave dirt and stain back behind underneath. Okay. So what else do I need to do on that? Maybe it needs to still go just a little bit darker.
In the front under those front cactuses.
Yeah, exactly. It's ultramarine blue. Pull a little bit of this red into there, and here, let's move this so that Lynn can see what we're doing if she cares.
I do.
You do. Okay. Hopefully you can see this. I mean, the one disadvantage of this from the videos that I was doing for you guys is that I don't have a way to bring this in closer unless I lift it up. Here, let's just lift it up so you can see it a little bit better there. So what we're going to do is come in a little bit darker underneath the cactus here and under the cactus there. That felt like it needed a little darker. And I'm going to put a little, do it sort of blue so it's cool. I'm seeing that that looks a little bit blue. So that's going to go a little darker there. And it's going to go a little darker right next to this. Shadows are always the darkest right next to whatever is throwing the shadow, because what happens is that as the light comes in and around, it spreads out. So it wraps around and gets around things. So right closest to whatever it is that's throwing the shadow, light's too much straight over this to really see, but you can see under Gary's box that he's got sitting there, there's a little bit of a shadow underneath of it, and it's darkest right in close to the box, and then it's a little bit lighter. So I want to take that blue, and then I've got a little bit of a red brown here, and I'm going to pull that out into the red brown so we get a color shift here so that it's coolest, darkest right next to that. Oh, and this guy needs to be dark right next to there. And so this is a little darker back in here. If we wanted a little feeling of some of those other cactus that I was ignoring, I could do that. And do we want to take the time to do that tree now, or should that wait? We could do it. Okay. I need to mix myself a black though. So you listen. The easiest, quickest black that we can make is ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. So when we're making blacks, any two colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel will make a black, gray, or brown. So if I mix red and green together, I can get a black out of it. If I mix blue and yellow, orange together, I can get a black. So essentially what we're doing with the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue is a blue and orange combination, because our burnt sienna is almost orange, but because it's brown, it's already heading a little bit toward that neutral. So it goes a little faster than if I did, because I could do one of these oranges with the blue, get a black eventually too, but it's faster to start with that brown and add the blue to it.
I have a Prussian blue, which is really dark.
Yeah.
Good for blacks.
That will make a nice black. It makes a very clear black. So I also will use, I've got an Indothrone blue, which is similar to the Prussian blue, and that makes a lovely black. But it is a fairly transparent black. And if you want a little thicker, less transparent, then going with the ultramarine blue will do that. And when I was taking a workshop a number of years ago, the instructor was sort of talking about the difference between a transparent and a semi-opaque black. And so if you're doing something like tree trunks that are solid, you want them semi-opaque. If you're doing something like a hole into a cave or into a dark area but it's airy, then a transparent black works really nicely. So, and then the other thing is what other colors do you have in your piece? So you want to sort of stick with some of the other colors you've been working with. Not this black, white or not. The other thing about mixing your own black is that you have to balance it back and forth. Yeah, and this looks like it's going to be good. Okay. Get the excess off of there. actually I can start with this brush and do the very biggest part of this with the big brush. So I'm going to sort of play the calligraphy game. The tree is going to come from here, and then it's going to work its way across and through there. It's going to work its way across and through here. So if I think about that before I start, then I can just do it without drawing it. So, and it's going to come across this, and then it's going to work its way. And if I lift my brush, I can get a skinnier line. And then it's going to come up. I love the calligraphy of these. So as you move your brush, if you come upwards, you can get very skinny. If you press down, you get very fat. And there's a point when it just doesn't work any longer and you need to go with a smaller brush. But for these medium-sized branches, I can do a pretty good job with just this brush. And I'm going to let this come a little further than what I see in the piece. I'm just sort of looking at this and going, what have I got here? Oh, and then another one is going to go off that way. Another one's going to come up this way. Maybe this is a little fatter right here so that we've got some different size tree trunks. Okay, I think I better stop with that brush because I'm starting to feel like they're too fat. I want to dampen my brush a little bit so that that paint will really get into it, but I don't want it too wet because I want to keep that nice dark paint. Okay. Keep the fuzzy head out of there, Margaret. So I got to paint really high with my brush. Got to hold it pretty much upright. And you want to start somewhere where you're going to have a fat line so that if it drops down and it becomes fat, it's okay. And then as you go skinnier and pull it away. So this calligraphy of the tree branches becomes such an interesting part of the painting. And of course, I had to have everything finished back behind there before I did any of this, because now I won't be able to go back and do any work back in there because it'll be on top of what I've got here. And it looks like there's another branch that actually comes this other direction down into here. I don't want to paint around this because if I do, then I'm going to get funny edges where it comes up next to it. So you want to be sure you've got the area finished behind there before you start bringing this in on top of it. Oops. And branches, as they come down, they get more and more little pieces on them. So it breaks it into smaller and smaller pieces. I'm now putting my thumb on my page so that I have a little more control, because otherwise my hands start shaking or I can't control how fast it's going to hit the page. And I don't want to repeat the same thing too often. Much more of that do we want in there. I don't have to fill it in as much as it is with that other piece. It almost feels like I could come in and do just a little bit with the Bad Hair Day brush. Let's try it on something else first though. So this is a dry brush that will sort of pull apart, and I can get just sort of uneven marks like that with it. And so that can be out in here for some of this, the outer parts of that. I want to be careful not to do too much of it because otherwise it's going to look a little strange. Okay, I think I should stop.
What kind of brush is it?
It's a cheap painter's brush.
Right, yeah.
The
Like
cheapest,
$1.
cheapest dollar brush you can find, and then go ahead and pull some of the hairs out and break it apart a little bit so that it's even a little worse. That's what we're calling it, the Bad Hair Day brush. This was
Call it what?
Bad Hair Day brush.
It's a
yesterday.
technical term.
It's a technical term. It reminds me that yesterday I was working out in the yard and I didn't put a scarf on. And the wind was blowing, I was banging into brushes and I came back in and I looked in the bathroom. My hair was out to here. It was out to here. It was like, oh, the neighbors saw me like that, did they?
Yeah, I couldn't get in the bathroom this morning because my son's girlfriend was in there.
Uh-huh.
So I just took some water.
Get some water on it, knock it back down. Yes, us with curly hair. All right, so Lynn, I'm gonna show that to you up a little closer. So I think we're done with this for today. And next week I will take the resist off, so.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna stop the record.